Waffle Flower channel. This is Nicole and it's in the details. Today's card features some stamped and embossed accents and a greeting on vellum. Vellum is one of my favorite ways to create dimension without a lot of bulk. This card has lots of dimension with the sky, the clouds, and the hot air balloons as well as the greeting, but it's relatively flat. I'm going to start with a piece of 5.5 by 4.25 inch Bristol smooth cardstock, and from this I'm going to use a patched layers die to die cut a decorative border all the way around. This is a very easy way to create the look of a matted piece or background on another piece of paper, but it's actually all going to be one piece of paper with just a little creative masking. So it's got this great stitching design all the way around. It actually doesn't die cut anything, it just gives you that great stitching detail. I've used some post-it tape to mask off the edges from the stitching out, and on the center part of the panel I'm going to stamp some clouds from the Across the Miles stamp set. I am stamping these with Versamark ink, so it's a little hard to see. Even in real life, it's a little hard to see. I kind of had to guess a little bit. So what I will do is go ahead and remove the masking paper, because I'm going to need to use this again here in a little bit, and I don't want to get embossing powder all over it. I'm going to set all these little pieces over to the side, pick up my panel, sprinkle on that white embossing powder, which is going to allow me to see where I have all of my stamped clouds. So there is what my background looks like with the clouds. Go ahead and grab my heat tool and then heat emboss all of the clouds. Make sure that all the embossing powder gets melted really well. And this is going to allow for some really fun embossed resist. So this is going to be the first layer of this card design. Once all the embossing powder is melted, I'm simply going to lay this back out on my work surface, take those masking strips that I used before to mask off the edges of the design, and simply reposition those. I try to get as much out of my masking material as possible. This can be torn into smaller strips then to hold dies in place. If you're die cutting some stamped and colored pieces, things like that, so you can use it over and over. Now for the embossed resist, I'm going to apply Salty Ocean and Tumbled Glass Distress inks to the center portion of the panel only. This is where you're going to get the look of clouds on a blue sky, so the embossed resist. When the masking paper is removed, you're going to have a nice white border around all of the edges, so it looks like it's been matted on this really fun decorative piece with some fun stitching. An ombre effect of light blue to dark blue here, or a more royal blue, I guess you want to call it. Once I have those inks blended, I'm going to spritz the background with water from a distress sprayer to add a little more texture and fun to the sky. The water will wick away that distress ink, and I'll use a paper towel to blot all of this dry and buff off any of the embossed areas so that any ink sitting on top of the embossing gets wiped off and you have those great white outlines of the clouds. So here I'm just going to pull all of my masking tape off, and you can see that it looks like a blue cloudy sky matted on a white piece of paper. I'll set that aside for a second while I go ahead and stamp the hot air balloon images from the Across the Miles stamp set on some smooth white cardstock using a black ink for Copic coloring. I'm going to go ahead and clean those inks after I've stamped them the first time, and then simply take the small hot air balloon and stamp it again. My sky is going to have 3 hot air balloons in it, plus a couple of little birds. I decided I thought I'd add those as well. All of the images are from the Across the Miles stamp set. Then I'm going to color these in with Copic markers. And I wanted to do a rainbow look, especially against this awesome cloudy sky. I thought it would really be nice and bright and fun. I'm using 2 colors or 2 shades per color family. So R24 and R29 are the first colors I'm going to use. Then YR04 and YR09 for my oranges. And leaving that little circle empty, I can fill that in with my Y08 here in just a little bit. But I'm laying down the lighter color first, going back over with the darker color, or going in with the darker color and adding the shading, and then going over it with the lighter color again to blend it out. For the yellow, I have Y11 and Y08. Again, just blending. For the green section, YG01 and YG23. I just love this YG01. I think it's an awesome limey green color. Just feathering up from the bottom of each section and then blending it all out really well. For blue, I'm using B24 and B26. Feathering up from the bottom with the B26. And then blending out with the lighter color. A little R24 for the little scallop edge, and then finishing off with my purples, V06 and V09. I could try out several different purple color combinations, trying to figure out what I liked best. And then I'm simply going to fill in the rest of the hot air balloon image, the basket that the little bear's sitting in, again using all of those same colors. So the scallops are all going to be a different color. The little stripes of the basket are all going to be in rainbow color as well. So instead of going for maybe a traditional brown type of basket or something like that, I stuck to rainbow colors for all parts of the image. Especially with the little bear sitting in there, that I'm going to color in with some neutral colors of markers, I thought that the rainbow basket would be really fun and really bright against the pretty blue background. The bear is in shades of brown, E43 and E44. Go over it a couple times and get that shading just right. And then go ahead and move on to the other balloons. They're going to be very similar, however, there's not near as many sections in the balloons. So I simply skipped the orange section, and I'll skip the purple, and went with the red, yellow, green, and blue. Do a little purple for the top of this hot air balloon. Same thing for the second small hot air balloon with the red, yellow, green, and blue. Only this time I'll use some orange for the top of this balloon. Very easy, simple shading, especially on these smaller images. The basket here I did do in brown, but that stripe through the center I'll do in a different color for both. And then some blue, green, and yellow for the little birdies with a little R20 for the cheeks. Very simple shading here for really small images. And I'll simply take those and die cut them with the coordinating Across the Miles dies. I like to use a little Post-it tape, and you can see here where I'm reusing the Post-it tape I used to mask off the background. Die cut as many of the images as I'm using for a card with one pass of the machine. So everything but the second hot air balloon, and that's simply because I was already using that die. Go ahead and just tape that in place and run it through again to get my last hot air balloon image. So I've got my background and I've got my hot air balloons. Now all I need are a few more layering images, the vellum clouds, as well as a greeting. So I want to lay out my images, kind of make sure I have everything just like I want it, and then I can move on to creating the greeting. I'm using a powder tool on some vellum, and then I'll stamp the clouds, the same cloud image I used for the background where I did the embossed resist. Stamp this about 3 times on the vellum. Oh, first I'll go ahead and do the greeting banner, excuse me. And this is also from the Across the Miles stamp set. And sorry, I leaned over it. I wanted to make sure I got it lined up perfectly. The greetings that go with the banner, it's very mix and match, so it will work for lots of different occasions. And you can customize the banner with any of those greetings. I'm going to stamp that with Versamark ink and then heat emboss with white embossing powder. Heat set this and then die cut the greeting with the coordinating Across the Miles banner die. What I love about a greeting on vellum is that it overlaps the images on the card so beautifully and doesn't take away from the design, but it more blends in to the whole design of the card. It's one of my favorite things. So here's where I'm going to stamp those clouds now. And I'll stamp them 3 times because I'd like some multiples of these to layer over the background. Again, stamping these with Versamark ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder. And then simply die cutting these with the coordinating dies. The banner looks so cute wrapped around the hot air balloon. Just tapping off any of that excess embossing powder that maybe is sticking to the paper. Melt that embossing powder with my heat tool and take those coordinating dies. Even though this is a single image on this stamp set, you can use, there's 2 separate dies for this that come in the coordinating die collection. So I've got these all kind of laid out all over, and they look fantastic layered over some of the hot air balloon images, layered over some of the other clouds. Very, very fun. Now, because I'm not really hiding these under any solid type of image for the most part, I am hiding the glue behind the embossed areas on the clouds. And the best way I found to do this is to use some sort of a glue that has a fine tip to it, and just adding little dots of glue behind the embossed areas and then adding it to your project. I'm going to go through and attach everything now. Add maybe some white detail, white pin detail to some of the hot air balloons. I'll add even more to the largest hot air balloon when I get that in place. Those vellum clouds add just a really fun, nice layering touch to the design. So here's my big hot air balloon, the focal point, with the banner wrapped around it. And I'm going to use that white glaze pen to add some white dot detail to the hot air balloon. Kind of going along with the design in the orange layer of my hot air balloon where it has those nice little dots, I thought it would be fun to add to add even more accents to the other layers. I think little dot detail in a black pen would be fantastic as well. It probably would have been a tiny bit easier to do this before I adhered the greeting banner, but I didn't, so that's okay. I'm going to take a little glossy accents now and add it to the dot areas on the hot air balloon. Give it a little dimension, a little gloss. I also have those cute little birdies that I added, and I think it'll be fun if they're sitting kind of on top of the banner, on top of a cloud, anywhere in the design. They add just a fun little whimsical touch. So super cute. I'm just trying to figure out the best placement. So there are the little birdies. Add some black glaze pen to the eyes and also the nose of the bear. I think if I add it to the bear's eyes, it might be a little overpowering since it's such a teeny tiny image. I'll snip off anything that's hanging over the edge of the card. I've got some clouds and a little bit of the banner. Then this whole panel can be attached to a white top fold card base. This is A2 sized, so it's going to cover the entire front of the card. But it's simply one panel with accents added to it. Very, very low in volume. It's not going to be super dimensional, and it's going to be super easy to mail. To finish off the card, I'm going to take a greeting from the Across the Miles stamp set. There's several more, and I will finish it off by stamping the greeting with some black ink inside. So it reads on the front, "Sending happy thoughts," and the inside, "Across the Miles." Thanks for joining me today for this card featuring stamped and embossed vellum accents and greetings. For more product information, please visit waffleflower.com. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas.